Making headlines tonight, the impact of COVID-19 causes COSCAP to call for support for local artists. On the front line, we meet one of those workers who ensures the country continues to function in the face of COVID-19. The decomposing body of a man found at Powell Spring in Bathsheba. And coming up in sports, the CPL is looking at a women's league.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. We've had 6 straight days with no confirmed COVID-19 cases. It's day 7, and Barbadians are eagerly awaiting the latest information to see if we have reached the 1-week mark. Well, joining us live now to tell us more about that is Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kenneth George and COVID Czar Richard Carter. Good evening, gentlemen. Gentlemen, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, wonderful. Gentlemen, of course, as I just said, everyone is wondering if we've reached 7th straight day with no COVID-19 cases. So, Dr. George, welcome back. You're in the hot seat. What are the latest stats?
Thank you so much, Shane. It is with indeed regret and sorrow that we have to report a single new death from COVID-19 in Barbados. This occurred in a 70-year-old male who was happened to be a non-national and had a fairly difficult course which ended with pneumonia, and his predisposing condition was that he had a chronic non-communicable disease. So I just would like to inform the population that this is a death that has been recorded after going 6 days of having either no cases or no deaths. Barbados is recording a death today. And as I said, I would like to send my condolences to his family and friends.
Okay, that's a death. Has there been any cases?
Yes, in addition to that, today was a very busy day for us. There was a new case reported in a 66-year-old Barbadian female that tested positive for COVID-19. She is currently placed in isolation, and fortunately we believe that from her presentation, her course should be satisfactory. The issue is that this reminds us that we need to keep our guards up. The Ministry of Health will continue to let the population know what are the issues surrounding COVID. This is indeed a setback, particularly with the death and also with the new case. And what we have intended to do with the new case is to do extreme contact tracing, both at persons in their home environment and outside the home environment, to make sure that all potential contacts are identified, and we are going to put them into two groups, symptomatic and asymptomatic, and we are going to do testing on these individuals.
Okay, so Dr. George...
In addition to this...
Okay, go ahead.
In addition to this, we have been telling the public that we are going to increase our level of screening in the population, and therefore we have broadened the let's say the case definition for persons who meet the criteria. And therefore we're including even persons without a travel history. We're asking for persons with respiratory illness to report either polyclinic or their general, who will advise them what are the next steps. So we are broadening our for testing of the population in general. And we hope to go from about 50 tests a day to scale up to as high as 500 to 600 tests a day. Because only when we have widespread testing will we be able to get a good handle of if there's in-country transmission.
Okay, well, how many tests were conducted yesterday that that one single new case was found?
So the test, there were 64 tests conducted yesterday.
Okay.
33 of those were the Trinidadians who left, and I'm happy to report that all their tests were negative. 31 tests were done, 31 new tests were done. 10 were repeat tests, because remember, we are discharging people. 2 people went home today. So we need to get a double negative before we let people out of isolation or quarantine. So what we are trying to achieve with this scale-up testing.
Okay, let me ask the question. We had 6 straight days without any testing. How do you evaluate that? What do you think about that? What should we take from that?
Well, I think the take-home message is that we need to be on our guard. And we believe strongly in the Ministry of Health that during this difficult time of shutdowns, that this is the appropriate way to go. However, the results of the shutdown, there's always a lag time to the shutdown. So if you shut down for 1 to 2 weeks, you don't get an immediate effect in your numbers. So I would like to encourage the population to bear with us while we further investigate this and to cooperate with us with respect to having a more widespread testing done for all persons who present with respiratory symptoms in Barbados. We have extended this to the geriatric hospitals, and therefore all persons in the geriatric hospital who have respiratory type illness will be required to undergo testing, even though there was no travel history.
Okay, I'm going to bring in the COVID czar in just a second, but before I get there, let me just ask you this. Sometimes the cases are identified as being connected with someone who traveled or someone who had a case or contact tracing, but then we've also heard of cases that are under investigation. How far have we gotten with those investigations, and what can you tell us about those investigations?
So there is, to the best of my knowledge, there's only one case that is under investigation. This is meaning that we still remain unsure after doing exhaustive tests with respect to contact tracing. But most of the cases have been imported cases, and some of the cases have been immediate contacts of local persons to those imported cases. So let's say that 60% of the cases are imported cases, and let's say about 40% of the cases will be local persons that were traced to persons who had traveled.
Okay, let me bring in the COVID czar now. Mr. Carter, good evening. It's been a week now since we started the alphabetical shopping system. A week into it, what's your assessment of it?
Well, we are yet to conduct a full assessment because we want to involve the retailers to have them provide us with a gauge of what has happened over the week. But from our own investigations, we have seen a definite leveling of the degree of shopping that persons are doing, which is what we anticipated. We would not have anticipated the rush that we had at the beginning of that week to be sustained. I think that most of the retailers that we've spoken to, and in fact, some of the shoppers that we've spoken to, are basically relating a much more satisfactory experience. Yes, there are still queues at some places, but just to remind persons that this exercise and the whole process of queuing and the process of physical distancing, the whole system of reducing the numbers by way of an alphabet system, all of that is being done based on the public health advice to reduce the level of exposure that people have to being outside. But generally speaking, we are satisfied that the system is working to achieve its basic objective, which is to reduce the numbers of persons who are processing through the supermarket. And just to remind listeners and viewers that this is not just for the protection of the persons who are shopping themselves, but to reduce the intensity on persons who are actually working in those supermarkets or working in those shops, because they themselves have a degree of exposure that we really have to manage.
Okay, people are talking about seeing more cars on the road. Only today our cameras picked up some policemen doing some stops in Waterford with more cars on the road. You've always been one, Mr. Carter, to speak quite frankly. Are you satisfied with Barbadians' compliance to the regulations?
So I have to say yes and no, because we have seen a degree of compliance that we've seen in our population over the past couple of weeks where we've had these restrictions. And Barbadians in the main have been compliant with the restrictions that have been put in place. Having said that, we have large numbers, and still too large numbers are being on the street outside of the time that they're allocated for shopping, outside of the times that they are supposed to be on the street, because you really should only be going out to purchase groceries, or if you're going to top up your tank with gas or get a top up of your cell phone, if you're going to seek medical treatment or dental treatment. Those are the reasons that people should be on the street. And the level of vehicular traffic you're seeing on the street is really close to what you would expect in a normal day. And of course, we are not dealing in normal times. So no, we cannot be satisfied that we are seeing the level of reduction that we would expect based on us being in a curfew situation and based on the restrictions that we've put in place.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. We have to take a commercial break here. Oh, not yet. Okay, it's time for another question. Okay, COVID Czar, I know every time you come on, people always think of regulations and you're coming to give some other regulation, but I know you guys have some initiatives that you've been putting on as well that you want to speak about.
Yes, I just want to let the public know that quite a lot is going on to support the public health initiatives that are being implemented, largely led by the Health Emergency Operations Center. There are 3 specific initiatives that I wanted to let the public of Barbados know that we are developing and rolling out. One is an outreach program for psychosocial well-being and mental health. So that program is to support families and communities to cope with the negative mental and psychological impacts of COVID-19. We know that a lot of people haven't been cooped up, and a lot of the restrictions will have those psychosocial impacts. And we are basically rolling out this program to cater for those particular needs at the individual and the community level. We are also launching a virtual arts competition for school-aged children. The idea here is that this will be designed and managed by the National Cultural Foundation, and we are seeking to engage young people as influencers, school-aged children, to embrace their creativity and for them to see themselves as actors in the fight against COVID-19. There's a lot of influencing potential and creative potential among our young people, and we want to harness that and use that basically as part of the response to COVID-19. And then finally, we are launching a community health outreach program for the elderly, which is going to be led by the COVID-19 response unit in the Prime Minister's office. This is going to be to reach out to elderly persons, especially those who are living alone, to check up on their health and their circumstances, because we've been saying from the very beginning that this population represents a very vulnerable part of our population, and we are going to do everything within our power to outreach or to reach out to them and to support them to remain healthy and to minimize the level of exposure which they are experiencing.
Okay, Dr. George, if I can bring you back in, is there any evidence of community spread?
Looking at the information that we have, and we will certainly be very frank with the public when we have reached that position. At this point in time, the evidence does not support widespread community spread of COVID. And therefore, early in the epidemic, it is important that this is the opportunity to wrestle these cases down to the ground. particularly as the likelihood of international travel and flights and sea and aircraft have diminished over the period of time. This is the time when we need to make sure that we work even harder with the public. And I would just like to say that we need the public's cooperation in this. This afternoon, we spent a while with the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, again looking at ways to expand testing in Barbados. And that is what it is about. It cannot be a government-only response. It must be a sector-wide response to make sure that the population is protected.
Okay, and the other question I have for you is that yesterday, I know the stats said that we had 45 in isolation, and now it's probably up to 46 with that new case. What is the general health of the people in there? How are they? Are any of them on ventilators?
So there is, Shane, there's less because, as I said, 2 or 3 people were discharged after having 2 consecutive negative tests. So these persons were discharged from Blackman and Angola. Mm-hmm. So there are 41 persons in Blackman and Angola.
Mm-hmm. What's the general health of the people there? How are they?
Well, what we have done is a decision to the patients that require ventilatory support and are much more ill are being managed at Harrison's Point. And patients who are less dependent on medical care, I'm not saying they're not sick, are being managed at Blackman and Angola for now.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. So the main news coming out of the update tonight is that we have 1 new death, a 70-year-old non-national, and a new singular case, a 66-year-old female. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Okay. COSCAP's CEO Erica Smith says the cancellation of crop over celebrations this year will have devastating effects on the artists, songwriters, producers, musicians, and background vocalists, along with many others who rely on the industry to earn a livelihood. Ms. Smith says music industry participants will need immediate financial relief in order to cope. However, there is a right way in going about it.
Beyond immediate relief, the aim should not be to embed a system of charity or mendicancy, but to establish one that enables those artists and other cultural and creative industry participants with the ability to develop their business and move towards increased financial security. On the one hand, as the current situation should make really clear, the artists have a role to play and they should contribute to the NAS, and as soon as they can afford it, medical insurance.
The COSCAP CEO said society must also consider the role they have to play in uplifting the cultural industries.
Once our economy reopens and we return to normal, surely we understand that we need a determined effort to focus on the creation of local content, and this should include local, creative, and cultural content. Otherwise, we will only really be working towards supporting the development of the American, Chinese, European, and other foreign economies.
The Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training is reporting that online teaching has started at all tertiary institutions and most private schools. This follows consultations last week with Substantive Minister of Education, Santia Bradshaw, and ministry officials with principals of all public and private schools and with the teacher and principal unions. During this week, all public schools will be prepared to roll out online teaching using the G Suite platform. The ministry is working with providers and suppliers to ensure every child has internet access and devices to utilize the new e-learning platform. It will also be using radio and television in the interim to provide educational content to ensure that students are not disadvantaged. Parents and guardians of students who have not yet received the information on how to log on to G Suite are asked to contact the principals or class teachers. They may also call the ministry's help desk at 535-0798 between 8:15 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Now, while most Barbadians are home during the national 24-hour curfew resulting from COVID-19 pandemic, hundreds of brave men and women are making a daily sacrifice to ensure the country keeps running. We salute these Barbadians with our new CBC Newsnight series, On the Frontline. In tonight's opening On the Frontline feature, I checked in with Anthony Marshall, a proud heavy-duty operator at the Port of Bridgetown, making sure cargo gets out of the port and into Barbadian homes.
My day begins at 6:45 every morning. I basically comes in, if I'm rostered to drive the gantry crane, I inspect the crane before I go on the crane, and then once the vessel is ready to work, I start to work the ship. And my job is to ensure that we land the containers with efficient and as safe as possible. Well, the job is very dangerous because it's like sometimes you're over 200 feet in the air. So it's a very dangerous job, not only for me, but people that are working under me. I have to be conscious for me and the people that are working under me, always on the lookout for the guys that are under the crane, for the straps that are in and out for the crane. So it's a very, very dangerous job. You always have to be thinking at all times. Barbados import almost everything into Barbados, so from food stuff to pharmaceuticals, you name it. Even like for the water authority, we handle all those big long pipes that go in the ground so that people could get water, things for the light and power, everything we handle. And with different things is a different degree of responsibility, depends on the nature of the cargo. Sometimes when they are in their bed sleeping, we are here doing a tireless job to ensure that when they go to the supermarket, they go to the doctor, you know, that they have the things that they want for themselves or probably for their family. So, you know, sometimes we get to work at 7 in the morning, start at 7 in the morning, and we don't get back home till 2 in the morning. So, you know, we round the clock we work. My name is Anthony Marshall, heavy duty operator, and I am on the front line.
The decomposed body of a man was discovered this morning in an abandoned building at the Old Powell Spring Hotel at Basham, St. Joseph. Police say they received a call around 8 o'clock about an unusual amount of flies in a section of the building. They discovered the body on investigation of the area. When a CBC team arrived on the scene, police forensic teams were already there combing the area for clues. Lawmen have not yet released the name because all family members have not been informed. Residents tell CBC News they suspect it to be that of a man who lives in the general area and sleeps in the abandoned building. They say they hadn't seen him in about 2 weeks. Police do not suspect foul play, but they are investigating. A man is in stable condition in hospital after a shooting in St. Philip last night. Police say 52-year-old Wayne Herwood of Duncan's was sitting in his patio when 4 men approached and started shooting. Herwood received an injury to his chest and 2 others to the left side of his head. He was transported to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital by private car. Police investigations are ongoing. Still to come, Trinidad nationals who were stranded in Barbados are back home. Then we have sports a bit later, but before we get to that, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after you have been in a public place or after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. Cooperators General Insurance, encouraging you to stay home and stay safe.
Checking in with our regional neighbors now. The over 30 Trinidad and Tobago nationals stranded in Barbados for the past few weeks are back on home soil. The group arrived on 2 separate charter flights on Tuesday. We have a report from TTT.
It wasn't without hiccups. TTT News understands that they were already at the Grantley Adams Airport when they were told they had to return to Paragon in Barbados at a medical facility to undergo tests. Initially, the first flight was supposed to leave around 10:30 a.m., but that was delayed by a few hours. Attorney Prakash Ramada confirmed the reason for the delay.
Yes, they were delayed because of a requirement for it to be given some medical examination or test. I'm not certain what that is at this point in time. What I have learned at least an hour ago is that some of the passengers were already on board and were awaiting the others.
The results from the tests taken in Barbados will be sent to Trinidad as soon as possible. The group will remain in quarantine at the Rocket Center facility in Tacarigua for 14 days, during which time they will be tested before they can be cleared to return to their homes.
Farmers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have welcomed the resumption of the exportation of agricultural produce to neighboring Barbados. There was a hold on exports for the past weeks due to COVID-19, affecting who rely on that market. SVG TV reports.
Speaking from the Guichet, Minister of Agriculture Subota Caesar said thanks to a lot of work between local traders and importers in Barbados, a mechanism is now in place to facilitate the largest shipment of agricultural produce for the year. The minister said although traffickers are not allowed into Barbados due to the lack of flights and quarantine system in place, which makes exchange of goods difficult, the traders were able to make trade possible.
Therefore, the traders in St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the past 2 weeks, they were able to speak to their partners in Barbados, and they will send the produce from St. Vincent and the Grenadines to Barbados. Their counterparts in Barbados would clear the goods and place it in the distribution chain in Barbados, and over the next few days they will send the money through the banking system. We saw earlier this morning where several farmers brought produce right here at the Guichet and were actually paid.